So my name is Monique Cain and I am mother of 2 children diagnosed with autism and also the author of the Everyday Autism series and Never Give Up. So it's 5 books. I first wrote the first 4 books about my daughter Maddie after she was diagnosed, and in particular a little boy at kinder said that Maddie was dumb and didn't know anything. So it was like a dagger through my heart, and I really didn't know what to say to a 5-year-old at the time. So I started writing, and a poem turned into a book that I then thought, if I put a book together with photos of my daughter at kinder together with this story, the kids might understand her more. So I put my first book together, took it into the classroom, and the teacher read it out to the class, and she said it really helped them understand Maddie more, and she said there was nothing like that out there for kids. So Maddie went on to school the following year, and I thought straight away to show her teacher the book. With the same reaction, she showed the school principal, and then the principal then got each teacher from every grade to read that book to their class, so that then everyone in the whole school would know a little bit more about Maddie and understand more about autism.
And how do you think the impact of that book was? Do you think it made a huge impact on the children and the teachers?
Absolutely. They were all just more aware of Maddie's behaviour and reasoning behind that behaviour. So she wasn't then, classed as just being naughty or different. There were actually legitimate reasons, for her behaviour.
Can you go into a bit more detail about what type of issues Maddie faced during school? Was it more bullying, or specifically what exactly did she face?
Yeah, sure. I think it was more she, found it hard to, sit still and concentrate. And listen. She found it harder to interact with other kids because she was nonverbal back then too. So, she didn't have that language and those skills to be able to communicate with other kids. So, she wasn't dumb per se, but it just, it was a lot harder for her to learn, and communicate.
Mm-hmm. So can you go into a bit more detail about, first of all, how did you learn about autism, and I guess how did you learn that your daughter had autism?
There were a few typical signs. She, was lining things up. She didn't like clothing. She had regressed and so was pretty much non-verbal. She wasn't able to listen and follow instructions, and she was basically, trapped in her own little world. So, we knew something wasn't quite right, but probably not to the extent that it actually turned out to be. And we were still quite shocked even when she was diagnosed, because we had absolutely no idea what autism was. We didn't know anyone that had autism. So, it was a very, big learning curve for us at the time. So we had to learn, all about autism and, how she was affected, and then all the things that we could do to then help her.
How could you tell that she might be autistic? Because a lot of parents, they have children, and, some kids may not listen, but they may not assume that it might be autism. They might just assume that their kids are just, they're just kids. So how did you know that it was autism?
It is very difficult, because obviously all kids are different, and there is a huge range on the spectrum. So sometimes it can be difficult. In our instance, it was a lot more obvious because Maddie was to the more severe end of the spectrum. And, you don't like to compare your own children to other kids, but she definitely wasn't meeting those milestones, to the regular ages that the other kids were. And like I said, she was doing the typical autism traits of lining things up, not interacting with other kids, having that, language barrier, and learning difficulties and sensory issues. And then once we learned more about what autism was, it was more obvious. But in saying that, I think you have a gut feeling as a parent that something isn't right, and you should definitely explore that when that is the case, because normally that is your gut feeling telling you something isn't right.